Hello everyone, welcome back to Asturis in City Skylines. Today we have a huge project in front of us. We will build some sort of a main city plaza with skyscrapers all around it. It will have multiple levels, customized building shapes, public transport, and lots of lights. Let's go build it. This place wasn't exactly planned right from the start of the series, but I really didn't want to put some kind of really tall skyscrapers around the main train station like I explained, because it would just be too enclosed and would not really stand out. So I needed to build some kind of a different main part of the city, let's say, some kind of a main square, maybe main plaza. And this place right here felt absolutely perfect for it because it's pretty much halfway between the rivers and the sea and the main train station, and it's the part closer to the elevator. So it kind of makes sense that we are just going to increase the density, or at least keep it the same as we progress from the train station towards the waterfronts. I really want to keep some kind of very high density, and this particular place in here, it can have just like a couple of like super high density blocks right around some kind of a plaza in here. Now, since we are doing this kind of a plaza, and by the way, I really wanted to have it as some kind of a main intersection as well between not only streets, roads, but also public transport. But I don't really have that planned for the network of trams, like I showed you in episode 3 or something. But I had to do some changes, and I definitely had to do them not only because of this place in particular, but also because I just want to have the entire tram network a lot more dense. I really didn't have that great of a sense of scale, I suppose, in that third episode, or when I built that main tram hub, so I definitely left a lot of gaps. So I did a new plan. It's definitely not going to be like a final plan. I'm definitely going to change it a lot, because a couple of, you can probably see it, I'm going to put it in here as a picture like I did last time, and there are a lot of places I'm not really sure of. It's going to highly depend on the specific projects, how we are just going to go around the city. So yeah, this place is a great example of that. If I'm going to feel like I want to build like a bigger, like a transfer station between trams or something else, then I'm just going to add a couple of tracks throughout the city, or maybe just, if I'm going to do some kind of terrain changes, then I will have to reroute them somehow. But anyway, in this place, we are going to now have this new line that's kind of going parallel to the river, almost parallel to that waterfront line or tracks that we did last time. And the second track, this one is going to be going perpendicular to the river. Did I say perpendicular before, or did I say parallel? This one is perpendicular, that one is parallel, of course. It's a bit difficult. I'm kind of pointing at my screen over here, but you don't see that, so it might be a bit confusing. But basically, yeah, this lower track, that's the one going parallel to the waterfront, kind of. And the upper track on the uppermost level, that's the one that we have seen in episode 4 or 5 or something, just before we went into those waterfront areas. So I already kind of prepared this track to go here, so, that was pretty much the goal with that one, that line. So that line that I was talking about, the one that goes to the river eventually, it will cross it as well. So that's going to be a very important connection. That's going to be the topic for the next episode, where we are going to build another bridge. This time it's only going to be for pedestrians and public transport. Spoiler alert, I suppose. But it's really, really going to be something to look forward to, because I would really like to play around with it, just like I did with the previous bridge, make it super highly customized, our own custom structure create for it. So that's definitely going to be something good, and it's obviously going to continue this high density feel of this particular area. So let's enough of the introduction. Let's focus more on what I'm building. So I definitely wanted to have this place as some kind of a roundabout, or basically just have it as a roundabout and then just do the buildings around it. The main motivation for this particular style or decision was that Warner building from New York that I downloaded from the workshop, because in real life it's also placed around a circle. I'm not really sure if it's like a roundabout traffic-wise, but it's a circle, and the building also has that cutout for a circle in front of it. So it's absolutely perfect. So you could have seen me kind of shape this circle or size it so that it would fit that building exactly. I was using the network multi-tool for that, of course, so that we are going to get a perfect circle, although all these connections are eventually going to break that perfection. Now, all these other roads that are going into this area are right now not super important. This one in particular that you could have seen there is, yeah, this one. That's the one from the previous episode. So that's exactly what I was explaining in that previous episode, that I don't want to have that main avenue continue along the waterfront. I want to turn it more inland. So it's eventually going to end up in here. And this particular street with the trams, that's pretty much just a direct continuation of it, right? It has exactly the same direction, and it kind of originates. It's like a prolonged version of that avenue, so it kind of looks nice. It doesn't cut the roundabout through the center, which is kind of looking interesting. It's like connecting to it a bit offset, which is actually something that the real-life New York Circle has as well, if I'm not mistaken. And it kind of looks interesting, so why not add it over here? The real-life one has a lot more roads connecting to it, though. There's like very tiny segments between intersection, if I'm going to use the terminology from City Skylines. But eventually, I just only added a couple of streets. So it's not like the most important intersection for cars in the city, but it has a couple of connections, so that it's kind of looking nice. And this place, to be honest, it's more like an excuse to just do like a big open area with lots of lights and big skyscrapers. It's not really supposed to be like a big car infrastructure. We are definitely going to get to that later, although probably not in the center or in the urban areas of the city. We are mostly going to keep the big projects, road projects, for outside the city, like some kind of ring roads, ring highways, or something like that. So to all of you who are saying that I completely forgot about highways, I did not, all right? I'm just not really starting with them. I'm keeping that for some outlying areas of the city, but it's definitely going to be big, all right? It's definitely planned to be big. I already got all kinds of roads and tools for that, so, I'm definitely not forgetting about that. All right, so this place is supposed to be highly vertical. Now, before I get into that, yeah, sure, I'm using lots of procedural object buildings around here. I obviously had to, well, I didn't have to, but I did convert that Warner building into PO because I wanted to cut one portion of it so that I could put these tram tracks directly through it between the towers. And that's a very good decision. It kind of paid off, but at the same time, I really had to make sure that the circle, I mean, it's a square in a way that it's a plaza, right? But it's a circle. I'm not really sure why English has it like this. It's a bit confusing when building circular plazas, but we're just going to call it plaza, right? So it's not confusing. So the circle needs to be sunken. It's not going to be going all the way to the first floor of the Warner building, but it's going to a reasonable level where it appears as if it could be the first level, right? The real life building, and even in City Skylines, it's much taller, but I would already be putting the circle way below the sea level if I did that, and that's a bit silly. So it's kind of close to the water level anyway at this point, which is, not exactly ideal, but I definitely had to make it work with those trams and the shapes of the buildings. I didn't want to squash the building anymore. So this is kind of like a compromise. And then I also cut like a little hole in one of the windows for that other tram track. So it's kind of going into a tunnel. You can see that right here. Yeah, this is the exact track. In this particular place where it kind of resurfaces, I already changed that in some of my next projects, next builds that I'm doing. So it's actually going to keep being sunken, and it's just going to cut through the corner of the Warner building, and there's going to be like a nice cut exactly for this. As you can see right here, it's kind of just filled or encircled. Enclosed, I suppose, is a better word. I'm really having problems with circles and squares in this episode, but yeah. It's going to be just filled with all these little details so that it's looking like it's just originating from inside the building. So it's going to be kind of interesting. There are going to be entrances into the building from both sides, of course. This is like a little glimpse of how it might look when we are finally going to do some first-person rides. And I definitely do want to do first-person rides from most of these lines. That's kind of why I'm, making sure that these tunnels and all that look good, because obviously normally in these episodes we won't see them, but it's a good practice to just prepare for, those first-person shots. Right, so that was the Warner building. I just had to convert it into PO and customize it. Then I also got that other building that has that cut in the center of it. And, these kinds of buildings with cuts, they just scream to put some kind of a network through them, right? It's just, I have to, okay, I have to. And the height was not exactly perfect. Well, actually, height was okay, but it would have been better if I just converted it into PO. But most importantly, I really needed to just make it fit to the entrance roads to the circle. All right, similarly to the Warner building, but the Warner building already is curved by default, and I made the circle so it fits it. But that particular building had to be also slightly changed, and it definitely paid off. Then I had a couple of buildings around this place that I also had to convert into PO because they were too tall either, or I wanted to match them to some kind of levels of these pedestrian open spaces, right? So that's, for example, the case of, I'm not really sure what it's called. It's that building that has the tower and like a lower, larger footprint building next to it, right? You're definitely going to see it when I start building the green surfaces on it. So that's again like a highly customized thing that I wanted to do. Then I have a couple of PO buildings all around this area, especially around this block, because I needed to cut the basements of the buildings so they would not cut into that tram tunnel, right? That's unfortunately how the game works. You need to do it like that. So I had to do it also because of heights, and I really wanted to just customize those blocks. I was at first thinking that I'm just going to build a much larger area in this episode, but I eventually just focused on the circle so that lots of these blocks are not going to be finished after today. I kind of wanted to finish that block with the tram tunnel, but it's probably not going to be finished. There's like a building on the other side which needs some kind of a plaza on its own near the entrance, but don't worry, that's definitely not finished yet. Right, so these green surfaces. So again, I really like them. I really, really like them. They just bring so much better color into this area. If this was just pavement, gray, or some kind of different color, it wouldn't really work. The gray definitely wouldn't. Some other color might, if I just did a different color palette on the buildings or like ads and lights and everything, then yeah, sure, why not? But I just really like it like this. Right now, it's not looking that great. I keep saying that because it's not a very great contrast with the actual green of the grass. But this whole area is just going to be filled with structures, right? After we are done. So you're not really going to see that much green, and the only green are going to be these pedestrian surfaces. So that's kind of my justification for it. And like I said, I really, really like them. It's just something new, something I haven't seen before, so I'm just doing it right like that. Now, you can already see that lots of these levels just popped up in this area, and they are kind of logical, or they are the result of doing or deciding on, for example, the tram levels, right? So we have that topmost level, which is pretty much just the open surface on top of that bottom level of the Warner building, like I'm customizing in here. And by the way, that level is also going into that over this main avenue road on like a nice little cute curved bridge into that procedural object building that I explained before, how it has like a platform or like a porch, I don't know how to call it, on its own. It's supposed to be inaccessible, obviously, by default, but I just made it connected to this plaza because I really felt like that's something I just wanted to do. And by the way, this place, I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place today, but this place is supposed to be like a huge pedestrian intersection as well, right? So it makes sense that if you are going to get off the trams, you're just going to use these pedestrian paths to just go into, well, anywhere around this area. So there are going to be some residential areas as well around, not exactly in the circle in here in the pit or in the buildings around it, but in the blocks around, right? So it makes sense that if you are just going to, I don't know, arrive into Asturis, you're going to board the tram, get to this area, and then you can walk like anywhere, right? Without going down to the main street level and having to cross all the intersections, which is going to be just much faster, much more convenient, much more efficient for traffic as well, because You are going to see that in the cinematics. We are going to have like huge crowds of people using all these open surfaces. So that kind of ties to all the reasons that I explained in the previous episodes, like why I'm not really detailing these open surfaces with like lots of clutter, because we are going to get lots of pedestrians on them. This particular place is going to be a great indication of that, and you can see we really don't have a lot of population in the city yet. So when we are going to have lots of population, it's definitely going to pay off to have these surfaces like huge, right? And prepared for large crowds of people, because in city skylines you can have large crowds of people on like a small area, but they are just going to look like bad, really bad, because all the people are just going to be kind of sandwiched into one compressed path, which is just looking bad. So I'm making sure to also use not exactly the tiniest invisible pedestrian paths, but also some of the 8-meter and 16-meter variants, which is just going to spread those people into much larger area, much larger footprint, which is, the people are kind of going to be the details in this area. If you think about it, they are going to form some kind of dynamic detailing that is just going to be moving around the area. That's kind of what I'm counting on, really. But unfortunately, it's going to be something that we are only going to observe after the city gets much, much larger. So this is the pedestrian infrastructure that I was talking about, and it's going to be huge. It's going to be extensive. In the previous episode, I said that in there, it was really big. In this one, it's going to be like at least 3 times larger. So we have to connect all of these levels together. And not only that, but we also have to think about and prepare possible connections for like future areas. Because just like in the previous episode, this one is going to be like a disconnected project. It's not on the side of anything we build right now, which is kind of unfortunate. I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, even in the building, not just in the commentary, but I just really wanted to do that. And it's probably a bit easier to do that, to, define the main areas of the city and then kind of do the pockets between them with some smaller, like different projects, right? It's actually kind of easier if you think about it that way. So I would really like to continue, although, well, not really continue, because in the next episode and some couple of next episodes as well, we are going to be on the sides of places that we built. So that's gonna be nice, and eventually everything is going to connect and tie together. So don't worry about that. All right, so let's return back and finally finish talking about these open surfaces. So we have in total, I believe, 3 levels in this place. The topmost level is that tram that goes directly from the main transportation hub, so that's probably the most important one. And then we have the middle level, which is probably the smallest as well, and it has that other tram line, the new one that doesn't really have any trams right now, because it only has this one stop, so it's not going to work right now. And then we have the surface. Now the surface on the circle itself down there, it's sunken compared to the rest of the terrain. So the actual terrain is actually the middle level, right? So it's like +1, 0, and -1 levels in this place. And yeah, there's a good shot of that green pedestrian surface going into that the open area in this building. It's looking really good. There's going to be like a planter in the middle. There was a pool in the model of that building, but there's going to be a planter. So that's going to be looking hopefully really good. Now, finally, we are going to do lights. And in the previous episode, I kind of dipped my toes in these kinds of advertisements and everything. I said in that public infrastructure episode, I'm not really sure what it was called, that I don't really want to do these ads with text, because I kind of want to have them a bit more abstract, but I kind of abandoned that in this episode because I just wanted to have much more variety, and lots of this text just doesn't mean anything, right? It's just some random stuff just to form these lights in here. So that's kind of how I'm treating them, and I do want to continue with some kind of abstract lighting as well, though. I don't just want to have the ads, although this place needs them because it's supposed to be like a Also like a commercial center of the city, perhaps. Definitely like a business center, office center. So it would have lots of these logos with text and everything. But I just want to have it lit up as well with just general lights, you know. So that's why I'm doing these kinds of like beams on the sides of these buildings, right? Or like columns, I should call them. And it's actually super easy to do these or to create these. You're just going to take any kind of hollow ad that you have that has some kind of like a vertical line like this. You're just going to merge all the other nodes from it with procedural object, and then you can easily recolor it because you can just go into that text editor. You're just going to put a color rectangle on it, fill the entire volume, and recolor it into whatever color you like. So I'm definitely making sure that it has a good contrast with, even during the daytime, with either the buildings or the surfaces or something, and the rest of the ads on the buildings. So there's, for example, that kind of like a circular blue building, and, you know, blue and red go well together. So I put those red stripes on it. On this the Warner building, I put them green just because it has a nice contrast to the ads and the rest of the area. So really trying to use as many colors as I can. So yeah, sure, this place is going to be very colorful. It might be a bit too much, but you know, that's kind of how it's supposed to be. So what are we going to do? We're going to do places in the city where there are not going to be that many colors, and we are going to do city parts where we will use lots of colors. So, you know, it's just adding to the overall variety of Asturis, and it's definitely supposed to be varied like this. So, also doing lots of details like these entrances into these buildings, because most of these buildings are just kind of sunken with procedural objects, so creating these entrances inside is definitely going to pay off. And also with the previous episode, I was doing those colored spotlights right on the bridge, and I really like them, and I really wanted to use them some more. So this is it. I'm just going to use purple ones because why not? It's a good contrast to the rest of the building. And I'm going to just line the top edges of the Warner building. It has quite a lot of edges. It's not just a plain tower, so lots of opportunities for that. And also, you could have seen that in a previous episode. That's kind of where I discovered, even though it's kind of an old feature already, but I discovered that line up feature and move it. And especially for lights, it's an absolute must, because you're just going to put the first and last light, and then you're just going to put like random, you know, number of lights, and just going to select them all, line it up, and it's done, right? So lining these kinds of pedestrian bridges or tracks or even roads or something is super easy. You don't need to pay attention to the spacing. You don't need to just use the prop line tool, which would be a bit too clunky in this particular case, because with Move It, you can be just so much more precise, right? So that was great. And I used these swan lights. I think I used them in episode 1 in the space elevator, in the park, actually. These swan lights, they come in 2 versions. I believe that they are part of the modern lighting pack, the second one, the updated one or something. And they have 2 versions, one smaller and one larger. I'm not really sure if I used maybe the larger in the space elevator, but these ones are the smaller types. And they fit absolutely perfectly, and especially on the side. So I definitely didn't want to put them in the centers of these areas, of the open surfaces, of the green ones, but only on the edges, because the swan shape is like a swan neck, right? It's obviously going away from that surface, and it's forming some sort of a rib, kind of similar to that bridge from last time. So it's actually looking good, and I suppose it's going to look very good, especially when we're going to do the first-person ride of that top tram, because those lights are obviously lined on the side of that, so it's going to create some interesting shapes there. So using the same details as before and really going very lightly with them, because like I said, I don't want to clutter the area too much, because otherwise we would just have people just clipping through these. And yeah, sure, these benches I kind of put in the middle, but in the open, but you know, it kind of supposed to be like that. Didn't want to put them right to the building. And in this particular place, it was a bit too big. There are probably not going to be that large crowds walking there, so did those benches kind of like side by side in the open as well, so that people can just sit there and just, you know, look into various places. Alright, there is going to be an extra portion of cinematics for today's episode because I really wanted to also pay attention to the night shots. So, this was the before and after transition. I'm sorry it was a bit blurry, but that's just a consequence of doing some terrain changes in that, after shot, so the camera kind of moves slightly, and even the angle just slightly moves as well, so I cannot really do anything about that in editing, so sorry about that. Maybe if I was using Acme, it would have been better, but I don't know. I have some issues with shadows there, so... But anyway, let's not talk about that. Let's focus on the Asturis. You can see those crowds of people right here. Look at them go. It's really nice that they are just, using the entire width of that bridge there through the center of the circle. It's not so that great looking on that right part of the screen of the shot, but I'm definitely going to play around more after we get some more people to really judge the effectiveness of that transition or that path, that area. So maybe I'm going to use that 16-meter wide path and just make sure that people are just using that entire space. I do have those 16-meter parts, for example, below in front of that building with the yellow beams, right? So, but unfortunately not that many people use that path, so I cannot really judge it. But overall, I'm really satisfied with the amount of people already. And like I said, it's going to be so much bigger. So this is like a good indication of what you might expect, for example, for the stadium. When we built the Olympic Stadium, the place in front of it was completely bare and without any people, right? So this is kind of going to look similar because the stadium, like I said, I would like to put some kind of motivation for people to go there inside of the building, the actual building. And it's obviously going to be as well some kind of a big intersection for pedestrians going to the main train station as well. So yeah, these green surfaces, if you're going to zoom in so that the people are going to be finally visible in city skylines, you are definitely going to see a lot of them. And the people themselves are kind of going to provide the detail that the place needs. Now, also something that I saw in the previous comments is that Asturis is supposed to be tropical, but I'm not exactly doing lots of shelters, lots of shade, right? And yeah, sure, I suppose in some ways I kind of forgot about that. But then again, I kind of do want to keep the open areas a bit more open just because I want to see the action going on the streets, right? So I don't want to put like shelters on stations, stops, even though it would be realistic, yeah, but I kind of prefer just seeing the pedestrians, right? Seeing the public transport and all that. So I'm going to try to keep that in mind for future episodes, to maybe put more trees in the open areas, for example, especially the more natural open areas. But still, I would really like to, especially the infrastructure, I would really like to keep it more open for that reason. Alright, so as you can see, we have that bridge kind of prepared for next time, so that's what we are going to focus on. Thank you for watching this episode of Asturis. Hope you liked it. If you did, then you can do the usual. Put thumbs up below the video, leave a comment, share it, and subscribe if you're new here. And if you really like this and you want to support the channel directly, you can become a channel member using the join button below or the link in the description and become a channel member. Yeah. Thank you for all the supporters that we currently have. Really, really appreciate it. Alright, that's gonna be all. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.